We really get a special breed of doctors who come to our expo, I'm happy to say, and our next speaker is no exception, meaning he is exceptional. His name is Dr. Stephan Esser. He is a physician, author, and motivational speaker specializing in sports medicine and lifestyle modification. He is dedicated to empowering individuals to achieve their best health and maximize fitness, fun, and function. Dr. Esser completed a Bachelor of Science at Palm Beach Atlantic University, Palm Beach Atlantic University, medical school at the University of South Florida College of Medicine, a residency in physical medicine and rehabilitation at Harvard Medical School, Spaulding Rehabilitation Hospital, and a fellowship in sports medicine at the Mayo Clinic in Jackson, Florida. He currently works in sports medicine. He currently works at the sports and spine as a sports and spine physician, or the sports and spine physician, at the Heekin Orthopedics in Ponte Vera Beach, Florida. Prior to his career in medicine, he was a competitive tennis player, achieving the ranking of #1 in U.S. men's doubles. That was back in 2002. So he's also an exceptionally nice, gracious, and very warm person, and I'm happy and proud to introduce him. Please welcome Dr. Esser.
All right, I know you all just got comfortable, but can you stand up for me for a minute? I like to have experiences, and that's part of the thing here. I want to wake you up a little bit. I know you were just talking and all the rest. Just kind of put your hands on your sides like this and close your eyes for a minute. Nobody's going to take your wallets, don't worry. Close your eyes, take a big breath in, and a breath out. Another big breath in, and a breath out. Good, one more. Big breath in, and a big breath out. Good. I want you to stand on your left foot for me, if you would. Keep your hands on your side if you can. If you feel too imbalanced, hold on the table in front of you. Or just work your balance for a minute. Bring you into this moment. Bring you into feeling yourselves here, now, in this moment, us together. Good. Try to close your eyes if you can. If you can't, that's fine. One eye. How about one eye? Left eye, right eye? Yeah, back and forth. And good. Sit down again for me, if you would. I just wanted to bring you here in this moment because I like experiencing things, and to me, health is an experience. I also think it's important to know who's speaking to you. And Jeff, thanks for the introduction. Here's just a little brief thing about me. I think it's always fascinating to hear about how people got to this place, to now, to this moment in their lives. So my life and my story in health really began on the shoulders of this guy. This is my grandfather, Dr. William Esser, who is a naturopath and a chiropractor, one of the founders of Natural Hygiene, a movement that believed in these basic 6 tenets of health. It was fascinating when I was sitting in the back listening to Dr. Letterman. I was like, he's quoting off Natural Hygiene, for crying out loud. He was saying the exact 6 things that we've been preaching for decades, since the 1910s and 12s with William Thrall and all kinds of exciting different physicians and the like. But anyway, so I grew up on his shoulders because I grew up living with him, and in addition, he ran a 10-acre health sanatorium for 65 years. And I grew up playing in the mango trees and listening to his weekly lectures as he had over 30,000 patients in his career. And I joke that I grew up in a land of miracles because everyone got well. I never knew the taste of meat until I was maybe 21. Then I've tried a few things here or there, but never since then. So now I'm about 40 and, had some interesting experiences along the way. On the other side of the street from my grandfather's ranch was my father's tennis club. 15 tennis courts, an Olympic-sized pool. Let me tell you, it was awesome to grow up running back and forth across the street, picking some mangoes, eating them, and then running over and swimming in the pool and the like. And I got sucked into tennis because my grandfather, you know what he said? He said, it is one of the hardest things to practice medicine in this system. To practice, he was locked up by the American Medical Association for putting people on therapeutic water fasts and healthy eating. And he said, don't do it. I love what I do, but don't do it. Because you bleed out raw, right? Every day being oppressed by the people who are your brotherhood, who should be uplifting you and encouraging others to do the same. So I went into teaching tennis. My father had done some of that. We owned the club, etc. I went to Palm Beach. I taught the Bath and Tennis, one of the most exclusive clubs in the country. At Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago, where I taught the likes of Stone Phillips, Regis Philbin, Vera Wang, all these fun people. I did that well into my 20s. And then I got burned out with the club scene, because you're still just a well-paid servant at the end of the day. Very well paid, I might say, but still a servant. And I went back to West Palm, and I rented out a bunch of courts, and I started junior academies. Within a year and a half, 2 years, I had 75 kids playing, and I had 6 pros working for me. It was awesome. I loved it. But there was something missing. My grandfather, although he told me don't do it, he lived it like it was a vocation. We still have in our family garage in West Palm, this was in Lake Worth where the ranch was, bikes. But a couple of people, I remember, couldn't pay their bills, so he said, well, you can just give me your old ratty bike. And they left him, and that was it. The number of people that he didn't charge because of the way he practiced was just amazing. So how can someone say don't do this and then practice it so beautifully and elegantly and with such love and compassion? So it sucked me in. I knew I wanted more, and so I traded in the racket and 6-8 hours on the court to 12 hours on my derriere sitting in medical school. And let me tell you, it was not the most fun thing in the world. And it's kind of funny, I was there for about 3 weeks, and I called my brother and I said, I just can't take this. These people have no soul. I thought I was going to get to med school and they'd be passionate and excited about healing the world, really healing the world, and seekers of knowledge and truth. But yet when I shared my concepts, etc., you're crazy, you're out of your mind, what are you nuts, etc. So I actually dropped out, signed away all my loans, and I left, right? But I left a message on the voicemail of the dean saying, should I come back? Or should I, maybe I was a little rash. My brother called as I was driving home and he said, hey, you know what? They're having auditions for American Idol in Orlando. I said, what the heck? I'll go over, check it out. Turned my phone off after I left the message for the dean, put it in my car, went in, slept overnight on the concrete floors like you do with all these thousands of people auditioning. I bet you're wondering if I made it or not. I didn't make it, and the next day I walked out to my car to listen, and here the dean had said, Esser, get your ass back on campus. We need you here. And I was like, well, God, there's my answer. So back I went, and the rest is history, as they say. I ended up going to Harvard to do physical medicine and rehabilitation, working with the Institute of Lifestyle Medicine that's based out of Harvard. That was my appeal. And then I went to Jacksonville to the Mayo Clinic and did my work there. And as a result, ended up with a wonderful job opportunity doing non-operative sports and spine medicine in Ponte Vedra, Florida. In addition, we've started up a host of health retreats that we do in mansions on the beach there in Ponte Vedra, about 7-day retreats where people come and get the best of plant-based nutrition and exercise, psychologists, physicians, personal trainers, and the like. And today I wanted to touch on a topic that has been briefly touched on, but go into more detail with you. And that's about exercise, about movement, if you will. And there are 3 simple goals I have. I want to talk about these 3 simple things. 1, motion is lotion. 2, no pain, no gain. And 3, use it or lose it. Now, it's funny to me, right? So you know my story. I've been in this. The number of times I've sat with people and talked about stuff, the number of videos I've seen and gatherings and speeches and talks on the topic of plant-based nutrition and all the rest. I mean, it's like it's in my blood. I've heard it so many times. And what's fascinating is when I put up a picture like this, I bet the overwhelming majority of you, if we had a way to test your reaction, it would be nice fruits and vegetables. They look so nice. Right? Everybody would probably be pretty much in agreement. We'd say these are nice looking fruits and vegetables. But if I put up a picture like this, we might have very different experiences and feelings inside of you. Judgments of yourself or others, or feelings of discomfort or insecurity, or things you've tried and didn't like, etc. I would argue that there would be a wider mix of feelings about these images than about the others. And I wondered why. Why? Why one and not the other? Is it that we figure one extreme is enough, right? I'm gonna just eat nothing but plants, but whoa, I don't need to do other stuff too. We doubt the innate value of exercise. Is that part of it, deep in our brains? Is it we lack the knowledge about its benefits as a foundation and then how to apply it? Or is it that we have the same excuses as others? Is it time? Is it cost? Is it location, discomfort, previous injury? What is it that keeps us from maximizing our physical activity? And I would argue that very few of us in this room have maximized it. I know I have not. especially not the last couple years as I've gotten so deep into my medical practice, et cetera, that it makes it challenging. But it's still very much a priority. So what is it for you? I want you to think about it during this talk and later on. As you also think about the incorporation of more plants into your program, what keeps you from achieving your best health? Or are you already achieving your best health today? I don't know, only you do. So I want to explore some facts. The fact is that exercise is truly the second pillar of good health. And exercise is not some extreme fad, but it's empowering, it's preventive, and it's treatment. We're going to go through some of the science, the application, and then a little bit of that, it's great, Prochaska's stages of change. I was like, Letterman's using my slides. Or I'm using his, one of the two. So you can be more active. I want to tell you that and convince you of that. And you can improve some very important factors. We talked, in my intro, he said fun, fitness, and function. Because let's face it, the reality is, who cares how healthy your heart is if you're not out doing fun things? And who cares how healthy your heart is if you can't function at a high level, right? We want to be able to do things that bring greater joy to us and improve the world around us. Very important. This is nothing new. Hippocrates, come on, 400 BC, also take exercise, for food and exercise work together to produce health. Now, we don't know when exercise first came, right? I mean, where did it all start? We don't know exactly. But maybe it was when one of these creatures walked in. And you said, I'm out of here. And you took off running, and there was your first exercise. Or maybe it was when somebody in the other hill way over there said, we've got some wonderful berries, come check them out. And you took that long trek across to get some of those berries and try them yourself. But something changed over time, and we learned that we could begin to grow things, right? The dawn of agriculture. And as a result, of course, we could develop so many other fun and entertaining things like art and politics and lawyers. Yeah, that's fun. So my brother's an attorney, so what can I say? But as a result then, physical activity began working in as sport, as physical expression, as spirituality even, with some of the movements in Ayurveda and in the Eastern traditions. And in addition, we began to use sport to prepare us for war, something we still see far too much of in our great world today. But Hippocrates, Cornelius Celsius, some nice quotes. If we could give every individual the right amount of nourishment and exercise, not too little and not too much, we would have found the safest way to health. Or Celsus, take exercise, for whilst inaction weakens the body, work strengthens it. The former brings premature old age, and the latter prolongs youth. Now something else happened, of course, the old Industrial Revolution. And that radically shifted how we live our lives. No longer out cutting grain and such in the fields. Now we could get incomparable amounts of food with minimal work to us. And it began almost that we began to separate out physical activity from our day-to-day lives. And then it began that we had to look for it, right? We had to actually say, how can I work this in? And before you knew it, there were whole populations that did sport for pleasure, right? But then as a result, it turned into, well, I'm one of those who exercise. Oh, you and I were just talking about this, right? I'm one of those who exercise, and I'm one of those who don't exercise. We began to go into two separate camps almost, right? Come on. How many of you in this room have felt that way, where you begin to talk to the person who's the jogger, the swimmer, the yoga goer, the this, that, and the other? It's like, well, I don't go that way. Or you're one of those people who already does the exercise. So very interesting how we begin to separate it out, because our culture has done that almost to us as a result of this transformation with the Industrial Revolution. But I choose a less pejorative, a less judgmental, a less restrictive definition for exercise, and I'd encourage you to use this for yourselves. It's that exercise is movement of the body, resulting in the enhancement of health, but you read it there. And then let's break that down further. Exercise can be broken into the following. Leisure time activities, right? This is the person who goes and does yoga or plays softball at nights or basketball or goes to the gym. And lifestyle exercise. We just saw the slide of the cardiologists failing to take the opportunity for their lifestyle exercise, right? To take the stairs when they saw the opportunity. What about you and I? That's where we want to be more creative in what we can do to work it in every day. Truly, can you park further from the shopping market and walk all the way in instead of jockeying for the closest spot, right? Or what happened to the after-dinner constitutional, right? Where we ate and then go out for a walk with our beloved and enjoy the evening air. What happened to that? Certainly we need to get back to that, because I would argue that engagement in the community in that way will only improve our community, right? Because if you go walking down the street and you're like, wait, there's something wrong over there, or that person looks like they're in need, or there's trash on the street there, all of a sudden you're engaged, versus being in your air-conditioned vehicle all the way up into your garage, shut the garage door, walk out, get into your car. That isolates us so from each other. And that's where I would say physical activity can be experiential within the community setting and environment. And perhaps that's what those small, intimate European communities have done so well in the past, right? Where you had to walk everywhere, so you saw everyone, you actually interacted. So this is a basic guideline: leisure and lifestyle. Think about where you can engage more. Forms of exercise, we like to break it down into four basic: the cardiovascular activity, strength resistance training, core and stability, and flexibility and coordination. Now, many times we can bring multiple together, right? So my favorite sport, of course, being tennis. We know you get good cardiovascular activity if you're running around the court. You're having to work on balance and coordination as you're coming through with a ball, hand-eye coordination. You're having to use your brain to think about placement of the ball, etc. There are a lot of benefits that we're going to talk more about. But it's commonly broken down into those four. Now, the power of exercise has been well documented in all of the literature. If you look, these are numbers derived from scientific literature. I won't bore you with all the slides of the science themselves, but if you want them, just email me. And you can see kind of here, the power, this is purely exercise. This is without dietary intervention. So as the two physicians before me today were talking about, when you incorporate intensive dietary modifications with this, it's compelling with the effects on cardiometabolic disease. But truly, physical exercise is in some elements both preventive and others treatment. So you improve balance, you reduce fall risk, right? Because let's just be honest about this. We're going to talk more about it in a moment. You and I are all getting older. I hate it. It drives me nuts. I never believed that I would be here. You know, what happened? Likewise for you, right? We're getting older. And so physical activity, even something as simple as standing on one foot and brushing your teeth, right? That's lifestyle exercise. You just worked balance into your day-to-day habits that we talked about and rituals that we talked about before. I find myself now, because I've talked about this with many of my patients, that when I'm in line at the supermarket, I stand on one foot behind my cart. I just say, what the heck, why not, right? Because what is so commonly lost as we age is balance and coordination and all these simple things. We'll talk more about it. But you looking up at some of these things, beautiful to think about this. And in addition, of course, mental health and cognitive issues that right now are one of the major causes of disability in our nation with regards to depression and the like. And so how does physical activity influence that on so many good levels, right? Where if you begin to learn a new task, a new ability, this sense of confidence, this ability, this newness, right, within the neurologic system begins to take a hold. And that gives you greater confidence, greater self-belief, greater mental clarity, all of these good things. Do you know that studies out of Mayo Clinic demonstrated that in the top 25 percentile, the top group of people who exercise the most, they reduce their risk of Alzheimer's disease by up to 200%. That's pretty compelling. One wonders how much of that is the good blood flow and the circulation, and the fact that, of course, those who exercise tend to eat a little healthier as well, not always, but most of the time, as well as the fact that when you challenge your nervous system to do new and different things, it grows through a process called neuroplasticity, through something beautiful. I love this word. I have to share it with you. It's called arborization. Arborization, it's tree, right, growing. Well, the dendrites, or the neurons in your brain, actually grow in response to the demands that you put on them. And guess what? If you put no demands on them, they stay the same again and again and again and again, and you lay down the same pathways again and again. I thought of it as I was coming up here from LAX, looking at these 8-lane highways, and I was like, wow, that's like a neurologic pathway that's been run again and again and again and again and again, and nothing new, nothing different, versus a small mountain path where you've gone multiple different ways, and you see things growing and spreading, etc. So when you begin to challenge your brain, and I have to be honest, I'm going to be straight up, I don't like being challenged exercise-wise that much, especially not by my wife, who's a personal trainer. She drives me nuts, and she'll make me do really hard things in front of other people and then make fun of me, you know? And it's just like, really? I never do that to you, but nevertheless, we have fun with it, but it challenges me to do something new and different, and I find I don't enjoy it at all, But then, wow, my body changes and transforms, and I do enjoy it the next day, the day after that, etc. So don't stop challenging yourself, whether it be cognitively, emotionally, spiritually, as well as physically. There's no reason to put yourself on the shelf. I love it. That's actually, whenever I say that, I run that neurologic pathway of having seen a little handout my grandfather wrote back in the 1940s, and it said, don't put yourself on the shelf. It's actually on our website right now. You can look at it if you want, like a 4-page handout. And he was saying that to people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, and saying, don't do it. You shouldn't. This is just the beginning. I still remember my grandfather, when I was born, he was only in his 70s. I was ranked in the top 100 in the state through the 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s. He could beat me all the way until I was about 16 years old. So that means that well into like his late 70s, early 80s, he was still beating me on the court. And yet I was, highly ranked, etc. Crazy. And that's how you and I want to be as we age. But the bad news is you won't be there unless you work at it, unless you do it. As I say to my patients, the crazy thing about this whole nutrition thing is it doesn't work at all if you don't do it. But if you do it, it's compelling, it's amazing, it's outstanding, right? As all these wonderful studies that we've gone over have shown, and the same thing with physical activity, but don't be disappointed if it's not overnight. Most of the studies would suggest that it takes approximately 8 weeks, for example, to see muscle hypertrophy, meaning increased size, diameter, etc. in muscles. But within 2 or 3 weeks, you get neurologic changes in the muscle that make you stronger, that make you feel better, more erect, more upright, more in control of your body, etc. There's another thing that I think is interesting. Many people find in general society a little intimidating or uncomfortable. Let's just face it. If you come to them and say, I want you to eat steamed greens and brown rice, and that's what that's what they think they're going to eat, right? But if you go to them and say, hey, do you want to go for a walk with me? Most people are far less, fearful of that. They're far less, antagonistic. It's not that sort of, oh no, get away from me with that weirdness. Exercise is very much respected, appreciated, and understood by general population, right? They think, oh, it's fine. So it's a wonderful opportunity to work in with them a healthy behavior that goes hand in hand with excellent nutrition. Now, hear me loud and clear here. If you had to choose one behavior, I would argue that behavior should be nutrition. However, who's forcing you to choose one behavior? So you should choose all the good behaviors, right? Or as much of them as you can, and use that as an opportunity to get in for dialogue. So I would say motion is truly lotion. Motion is healing. Movement of the body is valuable to the neurologic, physiologic, and anatomic musculoskeletal system. So very important. Some of you in your minds right now may be thinking about, well, I hear that if you walk too much or jog too much or things of that kind, that you wear out your cartilage in your knees and your hips. Right? And you all heard that. People have said, oh, look at those people. They're going to have their hips replaced, et cetera. Well, the reality is if you look at the big studies, they do not validate that. And in fact, there are excellent studies that show and demonstrate that if you take an individual, unfortunately they took animals in this case, and you restrict their movement, where they locked them in extension so they couldn't put any weight on their leg really, or bend it back and forth, that their cartilage turns to mush within several weeks. And then it can just shred. But if you have that animal get intermittent compression and movement forces through the joint, it actually diffuses nutrition, oxygen, capillary blood flow into the cartilage. And it is stronger, more durable, and less likely to be injured. So, important. And if you don't believe me, you can go read my article that I published on it in the scientific literature. But then again, if you don't believe me now, you might not believe that either. But you can look at it. So if having adventures counts to you, if playing with children and grandchildren, if competing in a sport, if recreational activities, if your figure matters, if your sexual life matters, if preventing, managing, and reversing common diseases, if any of these matter to you at all, please raise your hand if none of them matter to you. None of them matter? Oh, that guy in the back. He doesn't care about any of this. But if none of these matter to you, right, and you don't want to achieve any of these, then please do not begin to exercise, because it will help you to achieve these, and then it'll get the wrong. So exercise should be part of your life if any of those things matter to you. But remember what we said about exercise. I'm not saying go out and play soccer, right? I'm not saying go out and play football suddenly. I'm saying movement that improves, sustains your health. So right about now, it's an interesting thing, is if I were to go to my refrigerator and say, I'm going to make myself a meal. So I'd walk up to my refrigerator. Hey, that's not my refrigerator. Wait, that's my refrigerator. Kind of, sort of like that more. And I'd get a plate, and I'd make myself something simple like this. It's really obvious, right? Most of you, I think, in this room could easily make a nice, healthy, whole food, plant-based meal at this point. Even if it's just a plate of some veggies, a little bit of hummus or something like that, right? You could easily do that. But if I asked you and I said, well, what about developing yourself an exercise program that's going to help you to achieve your personal goals that is going to be safe for you? Whoa. I wonder how many more of you would be comfortable, right? Because there are a lot of perceived complexities, such as, can I safely exercise? Will I injure myself? What kind of exercise should I pursue? Do I need to do weights, cardio, flexibility? All these things, right? These are kind of like all the questions that are thrown out at us, like, where are you going to get your protein? Where are you going to get vitamin B? Where are you going to get vitamin D? Where are you going to get, et cetera, et cetera. But these are things that, unfortunately, all too often in the plant-based world, we do not spend time talking about. And we should. Because truly, physical activity is important for our lives and our function and our fun. So, all good reasons to do it. So, let's start tackling just a couple of these, knock them out together. The first, can I safely exercise? The first thing you should do if you're worried about that at all is get a PAR-Q for you. Physical Activity Readiness Questionnaire. You can download it for free on the internet. You can answer the little yes or no questions. It is scientifically validated by the American College of Sports Medicine and the Canadian Association for Sports, demonstrating that if you check off one of these boxes, it'll tell you how to do it, and you come back with some negatives, you probably shouldn't start an exercise program right away on your own. You should go and be screened appropriately by a physician, whether it be with an EKG or echo or other things, all right? But this is a very simple, straightforward way to begin looking. Because the reality is, what none of us want is to wake up with a pachyderm on our chest. That's not good, right? And so if you have been consuming a more animal-based standard American diet and you go and strenuously exercise, you're right. You may have this big critter sitting on your chest. And you don't want that, right? Then you're going to see somebody else, which we don't want. But more often than not, it's not the perceived definitive risk that individuals have. It's the first part. It's not a real risk. It's a perceived risk of this. In fact, it's more of a perception of the whole half full or half empty. It's the, I don't think that's for me. I don't know. I just never, I guess you could sum it up like this. I exercised once, but found I was allergic to it. My skin flushed and my heart raced. I got sweaty and short of breath. It's very dangerous. Now, we all laugh. It's kind of funny to me because I had never experienced the sort of negative repercussions of exercise until I spent lots of time doing nothing and sitting around doing all these articles that I'm writing and seeing 30 patients a day and blah, 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 and doing all this and teaching residents and all this. And then all of a sudden I'd go out and I'd try to exercise and be like, I feel horrible. This is miserable. Now I know what people are talking about. And then I said, well, you have two choices. One of them is to continue to sit where you're sitting and do nothing. The other one is to begin gradually, progressively, to reintroduce activity in your life. And as I did that, right, I began to rediscover the joy of movement and what it felt like. And some of my little aches and pains in different joints that have, from exciting things I did in the past that were bothering me just kind of faded away, right? So don't say that phrase. or anything like it. Because inside, there are little voices inside each of us that tend to say stuff like that. We don't enjoy it, it's uncomfortable, it's unpleasant. Yeah, she's honest, yeah. Anyone else in this room ever thought things like this? Anyone? Nobody? Man, nobody. All the rest of you love exercise. So, what kind of exercise should I pursue? Well, I think that's a pretty straightforward question, but I think it's one that's best understood like so. Take a look at that. Write it down if you have something to write it on. This is an acronym, and I like it. I wanted to share it with you. Goals. What's your reality today? What are your options? What's your will? Let's do a 30-second or maybe a 2-minute little thing here. If you actually have a piece of pen and paper, do it. If not, do it in your mind, all right? If you have a good memory. When you think about your goals and what brought you here today, Simple things. Do you want to be healthier? Do you want to be able to climb, I don't know, some hills with your grandkids or your kids? Do you want to play a sport? Do you want to fit into a dress size you haven't fit into or a suit? Do you want to, just a couple simple things. But what do you think about your reality today? Because sometimes, we're kind of hard on ourselves. Sometimes, and sometimes we're not hard enough. That's the other part. But what is your reality today? Where are you in your life? Are you so overwhelmed? Are you working double jobs, got multiple kids, deep in debt, blah, blah, blah? Maybe taking time for leisure time activity ain't going to cut it. It's just not possible right now, right? All you can do is kind of focus in on the food and do some leisure time physical activity, lifestyle exercise. Options. What are your options, right? Do you live in a safe neighborhood? Could you go out for a walk? Are you able to walk? If you can't walk because of major arthritis in your hips or your knees, can you get into a pool? Can you get access to a recumbent bicycle? Can you get onto some machines where you could sit and do some gentle exercises? If your joints are otherwise healthy, do you enjoy yoga? Do you enjoy Pilates? If not, would you be willing to try it, right? And then where's your will? I always like people to say 0 to 10. 10 is like, there is, heck yes, I'm doing this. I'm all over this, and 0 is there's no way. Well, where's your will today? With regards to the changes in nutrition, as well as with regards to your physical activity. Where's your will? Because if your will is down at the bottom, don't even trouble yourself with this. Let's just move on with life, right? But if your will is coming up into here, you're really jazzed about this, and you're feeling it, you're here, and it's resonating. This is the right time. Then this is the moment. This is the time to strike while the iron's hot. So when you go to your hotel room tonight or home at your house, you should be making lists of how you're going to be successful, right? So think about that. Let's go over some recommendations. The federal government presently recommends the following, that we achieve 150 minutes of moderate intensity cardiovascular exercise every week. Now, before you take a big gasp, recognize that can be brisk walking, that can be sweeping the back porch, that can be anything that gets your heart rate up and gets you breathing a little bit more, okay? Anybody heard of the talk test? This is how you're going to know if you're doing a moderate intensity physical activity. Ready? So if you're working at a mild level, you can both talk and sing. Not necessarily well, but hold a note. Moderate level is you can talk but not sing, okay? And intense is you can neither talk nor sing, all right? Because you're so busy trying to capture your breath, all right? So for most of us, we want to start out in the mild level, especially if you're over the age of 45 or if you have any cardiovascular risk factors. And that's where the PAR-Q for you will help guide you when you go through that questionnaire. For those of you who are already exercising or who do not have major risk factors, you want to shoot for that moderate intensity activity level because there's a J sort of curve of benefit to risk that when you hit that moderate intensity level of activity, that's where you're going to get the most overall health benefits. But don't kid yourself. If you're out there and you're just walking like this, your heart rate's not up, you're not sweating at all, you can talk, sing, and belt or do anything else you want, you're not getting the health benefits we're talking about. It's nice you're outside, and it's good you're walking, but that's not where the real bang for your buck is. So make sure that you're trying to achieve that when you can. And again, it can be in as little as 10-minute intervals, right? Doesn't have to be all at once. So if you're somebody who's working full-time jobs and the weekend's the only time, then get your 45, 50 minutes at a time then. But if you can do just 10-minute intervals throughout the week, you can build up to that easily over time. And start small, start low, right? And build up slowly. We like to, in sports medicine, talk about the 10% rule. It's something that has been demonstrated to reduce the risk of injury in our athletes. And it's the idea that you don't increase in intensity, duration, frequency by more than 10% per week in any of those things, right? So if you're starting out by walking a half mile or a mile, you're going to slowly build up. That is probably the safest and surest way to prevent injury in you. Next is resistance training. All too often, I find that ladies perceive this as something that's going to bulk them up and make them look like Arnold, and men see it as the only form of exercise they should do, and if they can't do that, they're not real men. That's a mistake, of course, because resistance training not only releases a host of hormones in the body that influence bone health, metabolism, brain health, and cardiovascular health, but it also produces, over time, an increase in muscle, tone, bulk, etc., but not necessarily bulky, as some women fear. But sarcopenia, which we're going to talk about later, is the loss of muscle mass. And as we age, sarcopenia occurs to most of us, about 1% of muscle mass lost per year, right? So if you look at the studies, it appears that loss of muscle mass or sarcopenia is clearly associated with mortality. So the little old frail white ladies, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for you to have some retained muscle that allows you to be functional, and reduces the risk of falls, etc., and keeps your bones good and healthy along with a wonderful diet. Because I always think it's interesting because when we look at these rural populations and we quote how they're eating these plant-based diets and they have no osteoporosis and yada yada, well, wait a second, they're also climbing up and down the mountains with things on their backs and all the rest. So there's certainly a combination effect there of the two. Then we look at flexibility and balance. So if you're like me and you have a limited schedule, I like to work stuff together. So for example, if I'm going to do curls in the gym, I'm going to stand on one foot with the other foot up on a little raised platform and do my curls. I'm working on balance a little bit while I'm working on my resistance training, right? And so you're able to work things in unique and different ways. Speaking of which, push your chairs back for a moment for me if you would, and just sit with your hands on your lap. And bring your hands out in front of you like this if you would, and go. Pulse. You guys look awesome. Go, keep going, come on. I want the whole arms, none of this. Come on, the whole arms, go. Keep going. Does anybody feel it yet? No? Chest out, head up, go. 20, 19, 18. Does anybody feel it in their shoulders yet? 17, 16, the whole arms, go faster, faster, go faster. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. Does anybody feel it? You feel the burn? No? Oh, man. Well, we might just have to keep, hey, you're doing this. None of that. You're cheating. The whole arm, the whole arm. Good. Okay, ready? And reach forward and reach back. And row. Go. Come on. 1. And breathe out as you go. And 3. And pull your shoulders back together when they get back. 4. So I'm pulling my shoulders together there. 6. And 7. Grab the oars. Come on. 7. And 8, keep going, and 9, we're gonna do 15, and 10, squeeze the shoulders, and 11, and 12, keep breathing, 13, and 14, and 15, good, and go, in place, come on, lean back a little bit, put your hands up, go. Is that a stampede coming? Johnny, get up the tree. Does look like a desert outside, by the way, just so you all know. And keep going. Come on, faster. Go. Hup, 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 hup. Keep going. Whew. Anybody breaking a sweat at all? Yeah, I guess you all are. Your hands are up. All right, good. And clap. Thank you. No, wait. Keep going. All right. Do you guys feel that a little bit in here? A little bit up in your shoulders? A little bit of little things that we can do to continue to keep ourselves healthy. So back to grow your goals, your reality today, your options, and your will. Think about these things with all aspects of your lifestyle, of the choices you are making. Whether it be the meditation we heard about earlier, the physical activity, the excellent, colorful, rainbow-filled diets. So resources. As you're thinking about this grow, I want you to think about this. Who are people in your life who can support and promote this for you? Yeah? Look at that list. If you have your pen and paper out, write down the name of somebody who will support you. Think about this. So somebody that when you get home, or even who's here with you today, that will support you in these goals. One person. Then think about places. What's near you? For my patients, I've actually gone on Google Earth and I go, gyms, parks, these sort of things, and I print out and I have all of them within a 20-mile radius of where our office is. Yeah? We want to channel factor them, right? How many of you have read Doug Lyle's book and Alan Goldhammer's book, Pleasure Trap? Oh, you guys totally got to read that. Because there's this great, one of the things, I'm going to just tell you then, there's this great research article they quote, I think it was at Yale, if I'm not mistaken, or was it Princeton? Maybe Princeton with the seminarians, right? So here are a whole bunch of guys and girls who supposedly believe the same thing theologically and spiritually and religious-wise, right? They're there for a certain purpose, etc. I mean, they're hardcore, they paid to get in, they really want to do this. Well, what they did, right, is they took them all on one side of the campus, and they said to half of them, you've got to get across campus now. You are so late. Get over there. Go. You've got a meeting, right? Then the other half, they said to them, you got a couple hours. Take your time, but get over there at some point, right? Then they had people in campus waiting for them and coming up and being like, hey, my car broke down. Can you help me? Or, hey, do you know the directions to here? Or, hey, can I borrow some money? Etc. Do you know that 80% of those who were in a rush didn't stop? But about 80% of those who had plenty of time stopped. Yet their belief systems on paper were the same. So you and I can talk till we are blue in the face about how we want to be healthy and we want to be eating all these wonderful plants and we want to be exercising, we want to change the world. But if we don't set our lives up, we will be unsuccessful. So make sure you are channel factoring your life to be successful. What do I mean by that? If you get home and your refrigerator, your kitchen, your cupboards has anything that is toxic, it should be out. Because if it's in your kitchen, you obviously ain't serious about making this reality, right? But, and the same thing though, if you say that physical activity or spirituality or all these other things are important to you, what are you doing about it, right? So for me, I have to, for example, if I say I'm going to want to go to the gym or I want to hit the courts and hit some balls, I know if I don't have my clothes, my shoes, and my rackets in my car, I am not doing it at the end of work. For a lot of reasons, because I love my wife and children, and I want to go home and love on them and be with them because I've been away all day, right? And for other reasons too, because I'm lazy and I'm tired, etc. So, but make sure that you are serious about this, and it's a great concept of channel factoring, right? The same idea. If you're going to go out with friends, make sure you're setting yourself, hey guys, where are we going? Just some good food there? Stuff, oh, okay, let me look at the menu online, right? Find out what's there. If there's nothing there, can you call and ask the chef, right? Hey chef, can you make me a purely plant-based meal with blah, blah, blah? It's amazing, because if every one of us did that, right, with our local restaurants, what would happen? They'd probably all hang up on, no, they wouldn't hang up on you. After a while, they'd start saying, I want this guy's business, right? I want your business. And so I'm going to be willing to prepare you a food that you want. And that's what they would do, because it is a supply and demand, right? It is, I'm willing to do that if you'll give me your money. So anyway, so think about all that for you. Anywhere and everywhere can be used. As we like to show, we got about 50 videos that I did. These are called activity bursts everywhere. They're 3 to 5 minute videos. I did them with Yale University and Dr. David Katz, and we collaborated with my wife as well on there. And so we have about 50 plus videos. So please share them with friends and family. I make zero money off of it. That wasn't very smart on my part, but what are you going to do? And actually, the American growers of walnuts, the American Walnut Association, paid for this, which is really cool of them. So if you look carefully, you'll see walnuts in every video. So, but we figured that was fun. We'd do it. So, but there are little 3 to 5 minute videos that you can do anywhere. A lot of that sort of stuff we were just doing in a seated or standing position. So they're a nice way. We're actually doing some studies at Yale right now to see if your boss sends it to you in a big corporate center, if the group of people who receive the videos every day and are told by their boss to do it, if they have better health outcomes than the people who are just told, hey, go exercise, is good for you, kind of a thing. So we'll see. I'll keep you updated if I have the pleasure of joining you again. And then electronics, right? This is the 21st century. There are a lot of kind of cool and fun things out there if you like them. Different applications and pedometers and accelerometers and all kinds of gadgets. I mean, the reality is here in some ways, I'm not going to lie, it's kind of sad, right? We've kind of taken exercise out of our lives, just like we've kind of taken our food and taken the fiber and the nutrients and the water out of it, right? And then we sell people fiber and we sell them back the nutrients. The same idea with the exercise stuff. But I will say, there's some fun little gadgets out there, and there's nothing wrong with using a fun gadget if it's going to keep you motivated and help you have fun. For me, they don't do much of anything for me, and I guess I'm a cheapskate too. But for other people, they're tons of fun. And I've seen people be very successful with them because why? It's the same as taking a diary and writing down everything you're doing, and it begins to make you more aware, right? As well as some of these products actually show you also how you're sleeping, right? And whether you're waking, rest cycles, all this business. And that's good, because truly, sleep is the period of healing for us, isn't it? And that's often overlooked. You saw in those 6 tenets of hygiene, it mentioned that, right? The value of good sleep and how crucial that is for us to heal. It's interesting for me, because I grew up, I want to confess to you, and this is really important, because I don't want to be up here and tell you one thing and pretend other things have not happened in my life. So I grew up believing that eating this way and exercise would make you almost superhuman, and nothing would get you, and you would just thrive. And then my father, who had lived this way his whole life, died of a brain tumor when I was 16. And my mom died when I was 21 of an abnormal autoimmune disease that did not respond at all to plant-based nutrition and fasting and all kinds of other things. And then just last year, my cousin, who was about to be one of the up-and-coming plant-based nutrition guys, about to graduate from chiropractic school, just got married, found out they were 6-month married, found out 2 weeks before his wife was pregnant. He died in bed next to her of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a genetic overgrowth of his heart. So let's face something very tough and put it on the table for a minute. We are humans, we are imperfect, and we live in an imperfect world. That is not an excuse to go get drunk every night, eat double cheese pizza, and smoke. But that is reality. And so it's so important. I now say this very, very clearly. You and I may die of strange, abnormal, weird stuff, but it's extremely unlikely when we consume what we're eating. But more importantly, we will be extremely unlikely to die of the things that kill just about everybody, right? So you will dramatically, by making these choices and changes, the science is across the board incredibly clear. You will dramatically reduce your risk of all the things that kill most humans on Earth, right? But there are weird things out there, and we are broken and imperfect people in an imperfect world, right? So love each other and hold each other tight every night, and those that you love and care about. Now, stuff. What are other things that can help you to succeed, right? All these fun things. I put them up here so that you could look at them and say, hey, those look like fun things. I'd like to have more of that, right? And use more of those things, etc. To do. I wanted to identify some goals, target exercise to help achieve these, use your resources to increase the likelihood, and then reevaluate. So use it or lose it. This was our second thing we wanted to talk about. We talked about motion is lotion. Aging. Yes, very sad. Happens to all of us, doesn't it? And if you look there, aging has a negative effect on cardiovascular health, respiratory function, our muscles, our bones, and connective tissues as well. Across the board. No matter how well you eat and exercise, age does things to the body, right? But again, do not fall into that time-trial tradition of saying, well, it's just age. It's not my fault. Until you have maximized the personal choices you can do. Because too much of what happens to us is not due to age. So, we're all falling apart. Man, can I get any more depressing up here? I started on such a high, kind of brought it down to here. Let's bring it back. Because disuse does the same things as age. It decreases bone mineral density, decreases muscle mass and strength, etc. You can read all the rest there. But it has all the same negative side effects as aging does. And in fact, a gentleman I always enjoyed speaking with and working with he'd come to Boston every once in a while, work at the Institute of Lifestyle Medicine, Dr. Walter Bortz, great article back in the 1980s in JAMA. A review of biological changes commonly attributed to the process of aging shows a close similarity of most of these to a period of enforced physical inactivity. A portion of the changes that are commonly attributed to aging are in reality caused by disuse, and as such are subject to correction. That's great news. They did these studies in who else? Medical students that would volunteer to be tied into beds for extended periods of time and see what would happen. And they all got rapid muscle loss, rapid osteoporosis/penia, and all these other changes, contractures in the joints, etc. We also see it with our NASA cadets, right? The astronauts would go to space where there's no gravity through the joints and through the muscles, and they would actually end up with progressive loss of bone mass and loss of muscle mass, etc. So very interesting. And to put it out there, to make it very tangible, I love this study. It was down out here in California some time back, and they took two groups. Group A were in their 60s, and Group B was in their 30s. They compared them by strength, and you could see the older population was almost 60% weaker when it came to things such as leg press, leg extensions, pull-down machines, and a couple other things. What else they did, what was interesting, is they biopsied the quadriceps muscle right here, right? And they looked at the amount of oxidation, right, which is a sign of aging, in mitochondria, which are the little energy-producing components of the cell. Mitochondria, which produce our energy, become less efficient as we age. Can you imagine how energetic I used to be? And I don't even drink any sort of caffeine. Can you imagine if I actually did that? Anyway, they had significantly increased oxidation in the mitochondrial level in the quads of the older population, right? Makes sense. Well, what did they do? They went in there and they exercised them for, you can see it, 26 weeks, did the 11 major muscle groups on 11 different machines commonly seen in a gym, just seated presses, pull downs, tricep extensions, et cetera, and they did it twice a week. 3 sets, 10 repetitions, very doable. Took about 25 minutes or so, these workouts. And you can look there. By the end, they were 20% stronger than they were, right? And they had decreased cell oxidation by about 50%, moving them back in the direction of their more youthful peers. Interesting. So truly, what happened that we see at the cellular level was that exercise reversed the aging process. There was no change in the nutrition that they were consuming. They also made sure they, looked at all that. So really interesting. So if you want to, we all know the baby boomers are booming, right? If you want to slow that aging process, mentally we already talked about, emotionally, but also physiologically and anatomically. So make sure that you're looking at that. One of my heroes who unfortunately passed away, right? You have to work at living, period. You got to train like you're training for an athletic event. Most older people just give up. They think I'm too old for that because they have an ache here, a pain there. Well, life's a pain in the butt. You got to work at it. Said in true Jack LaLanne style, right? So speaking of pain, our last and third, no pain, no gain. Well, true or false? Looks like the other two seemed true so far. Well, I would say depends, right? So what is not good pain? Not good pain, chest pain. Remember the big pachyderm, the elephant guy? Yeah, not cool. Joint pain, right? Hey, doc, you told me to exercise. I went out and ran, and then my knee's like this big. I can't even bend it, but I'm going back tomorrow. No, right? Not the right choice. So you want to avoid that. Next, pain that radiates. Yeah. So if you start having pain that's going all the way down your leg with numbness and tingling, that's not healthy or normal. Pain associated with neurologic changes, pain with swelling, or pain that fails to improve with appropriate measures, right? Such as rest, ice, compression, and elevation, right? Our old friend rice, right? When you roll your ankle, you rice it, right? Kind of a thing that you've probably all heard growing up. Good pain, technically. Muscle pain while exercising, a soreness, 1 to 2 days after your exercise. That's good. That's that delayed onset of muscle soreness. That's what you want to make sure of, right? You only know yourselves. This is the same thing as some people thrive on all-out changes. 100% go full, go hard, you got this. Other people get intimidated by that, right? They kind of give, 2, 3 days, 5 weeks, no. And so you've got to make sure you know yourself. But if you go and exercise, you should anticipate to be sore 1 to 2 days after. If you're not, you probably can continue to build a little bit more. If you are, take a day off, ride a recumbent bicycle or swim a little bit, get some good cardio that kind of detoxes or gets out a lot of that stored acid, et cetera, that's in the musculature, and get back, Do some more training. Moderate labored breathing during activity, we talked about. And then, of course, the opposite of the other page. So we've talked a lot here. We've talked about exercise as a concept and its history. We've talked about various kinds and forms of exercise. We talked a little about the science related to exercise. And you got stuck listening to some of my personal stories. Sorry. And now we want to go back to this slide that you saw at Dr. Letterman earlier. Stages of change. Visualize yourself and think about where you are when it comes to these. Where are you right now? And I'd love you to write this down. Write down nutrition or N, and write down exercise or physical activity, whatever is least kind of fearful for you as far as word-wise. And then write down spirituality, write down mental health, emotional health, whatever. Write down sleep. Where are you in these, in the stages of change? What are you willing to do? Where are you? You know, do you feel like it'll be too much for you right now? If you're going to really go plant-based, is it going to be too much to also start walking every day? Or do you think they go hand in hand? And that'll be a nice stress reliever. For a lot of my patients, I find that as they make the adaptation to a plant-based program that, of course, has less dopamine, right, in it, so they feel that they're detoxing. They're like, I don't feel happy anymore. I feel anxious. It was great. I had a patient come back the other day, and she has, unfortunately, diabetes, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, obesity, and neuropathies in the legs. And I told her, you know, give it a try. Watch this movie, Forks Over Knives. Take a look at this book. See what you think. So she went and she tried it for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, and she comes back and she goes, that diet. And I'm like, go ahead. And she's like, that diet made me really, really sick. I had to stop. And I was like, well, tell me what you mean by sick. Because I'm expecting, vomiting in the toilet and just like horrible. And she's just like, well, I just felt horrible. I felt really anxious and unhappy and hungry. And I was like, oh, that's really normal. That's good. And she's like, what? So you should expect that your body is going to feel very different as you make that transition, especially if you're in the standard American protocol, right, of less than ideal foods. But remember, a lot of those foods, how many of you have seen Fed Up? Right? A lot of those foods release dopamine in the brain, which as a result addicts us to them and makes us want more of them, so we desire them. This is why none of you in the room have ever met somebody who said, hey, just this is between you and I, okay? You and me right here, you and the black, right? Don't tell anyone else. I bought 3 heads of lettuce last week and I ate them all. I'm so bad. Why are you laughing? Did you just tell them? Right? You've never met somebody or someone who said, I bought 5 bags of apples and I just couldn't stop. They were so good, I couldn't stop and I feel so bad. Right? You don't hear that because those foods do not release large quantities of dopamine and serotonin in the brain, which do not stimulate us to return to them. But in our minds, we've gotten so hooked to those neurotransmitters that we associate various food products with that feeling, and thus those food products must be good, right? And we must actually enjoy them. The reality is it's not that we enjoy them, it's that there is an addictive thing going on in the brain that really helped us survive, right, as a population, right? Because millennia ago, if I was the smart guy walking around doing this and eating the lettuce off the ground, right, the little grasses, I would have died because I couldn't have gotten enough calories to survive. But the smart guys who looked up in the tree were like, look at that fruit. It's really like reddy yellow. I'm going to go up there and get that. They got the sugars of that fruit that gave them more calories, right? And as a result, they survived better. And you know the rest of the story as we talked about the Industrial Revolution and the rest. But our genetics and our brains and our neurotransmitters are still wired in the exact same way, aren't they? So we think those foods are good. Now, what's fascinating to me is the more times you have this cognitive conversation with yourself and the more times you experience the ill effects of a poor diet and lack of activity, I really think your wiring begins to change. Because I know, for example, for me, growing up, although I loved the way we ate, right? Oh, please, every kid, rebels, right? So it's kind of like, ooh, I'm at this gathering or this place. I'm going to sneak some of that pizza. I'm going to get in there. I still never ate any meat or drank any, sodas, because that was kind of like my, yeah, right, I've never eaten any of that, But you'd sneak the other foods, and you'd feel horrible, right? Going in, it was like, oh, this is so good. But then you'd feel horrible. Anybody else have that feeling ever? when you consume those foods. And so it's having that conversation the day of and the day after and telling yourself, is this really worth it at some point? Is it really worth it? For me, I've kind of gotten to the point it's not worth it anymore. In addition, because I'm walking around preaching this message, it's even more not worth it, right? Even in the confines of my own home, it's not worth it. So think about it for you. What makes this transition worth it for you? That's an important question. Because you should need to know what makes this choice worth it for me. I mean, you've committed time and resources and finances and all the rest to be here. So obviously you care. But what's going to make it worth it next week and the week after that and the week after that? Do you need to take a photo of some kids or grandkids or family members that you want to be around to play with them and have fun? Do you need to put up on there a place that you want to be able to walk to one day and walk up the hill and get to, right? Some sacred site or special mountain or who knows what, right? At one of our recent health retreats, I had this guy who was a patient of mine. He had no money. He's morbidly obese. He's walking with a cane, same things, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, or high cholesterol, diabetes, and he also had a neurologic condition called Charcot-Marie tooth, where his arches are really high and he can hardly walk, etc. Degenerative condition of the nervous system. And I gave him a scholarship, and he came and he stayed for our retreat. And the first day, he couldn't even get up and down the stairs at all. Like, there were like 3 of us pushing him up the stairs, trying to support him from falling. It was fascinating because by the 5th day, he's able to go up and down on his own 6 times, just in 5 days. It's like, this is unbelievable. Of course, his insulin needs dropped by 50% in 4 days as well. It was beautiful. Beautiful to see. But now, how is he going to transition that back to his day-to-day life? So you want to think about, each of us has stories and anecdotes of ourselves of how we want greater and better health, but what are we doing about it? What's holding us back, and who is supporting us? And where are we here? Where are you here? Because I'm going to be honest, there's some of these areas that I feel like I'm sometimes more in preparation. I feel like my spiritual life, I feel like my emotional life. As you can tell, I'm a little tightly wired. So I need to always work on preparation, more on my mental and emotional well-being. I was flying in the plane today, and I just finally set my hands in my lap, and I just deep breathed for a while, and just said, come on, let's take some time. You finally have a moment. Take this moment, Think about it for you. And then others, I'm already in action, but there's room for growth. If you're in action, let's say you're already physically active, think about those 5 types of exercise. And say, am I maximizing all the areas, right? I know guys, for example, who are amazing runners. I treat ultra-marathoners. I treat, Ironman triathletes in my practice, et cetera. And, but yet their flexibility is horrible, right? And their balance is not what it needs to be. For you and I, we're not out doing those dramatic things. Some of you may be. I'm not right now. But we want to kind of think about, where can we improve? Yeah. But really, I don't know, this is a powerful thing to me always, because it challenges me. And I kind of like being challenged, but I kind of don't. So it makes me a little uncomfortable. So it's almost like I want to just go to the next slide. Some of you are probably like, yeah, I want to go to the next slide too, please. But is that because you just don't like me, or is that just because this makes you feel uncomfortable? Because it's forcing you to look internally and think about where you are at this point. But that's a wonderful opportunity to do that. And, so let me just close. Here are my reasons to exercise. Right? And I think you should write a list for yourselves. You should write yourself a list. These are my reasons to be physically active, and these are my reasons to eat healthy food. And you should put that next to your bedstand, somewhere where you can find it, so that when you begin to lose sight of what really matters, you come back to it. It's an interesting thing. We as humans, we do that all the time, don't we? We get all passionate about something. January 1st, the gyms are packed. The diet books are off the shelves. I'm sure even our own wonderful plant-based nutrition books probably have a spike in sales in January. And then what happens? How can we create sustainable change in our own lives, in our circles of influence, in our communities, and beyond? That's really important, because that's at the foundation of this. Just as important, are going to be, what are your reasons not to exercise? What are your reasons not to choose plant-based nutrition? Those last 3 are not commonly mine, but every once in a while, they have been in the past. So think about that. I see patients all the time who come to see me who may have been with some wonderful habits of healthy living and then injured something, and they come to see me now and they put on 40 pounds, and they're like, oh yeah, 2 years ago, man, I was in such good shape. Or in college, I was amazing, right? We've all heard this. I look around at my peers, now that I'm almost 40, and I go, what happened to those guys? I see some of the guys that were in college with me, and I'm like, whoa, what just happened? When did it become okay that you look 6 months pregnant? Because what just happened? At what point did you say, it's okay for me to just put on all of these animals that are now living on me? When did it become okay to carry like a first grader on my back all day? And so we've got to really think about that. What are your reasons not to change? Because if they're more compelling than your reasons to change, you and I know the answer. You're not going to change. And so that really, 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 really matters. Wouldn't it be beautiful if our thoughts, our intentions, and our actions were all in symmetry? Kind of a clarity of intention and purpose and action? That's what I crave in my life. You know what I mean? And I can get up here and I can talk with you about the joy of this message, but then translate it into my own life and you translate it into yours. Sometimes we create wars in our own brains or with the people around us, right? Or we even create wars and battles. I create them sometimes with my patients. And that whole Prochaska's stages of change has really been transformative for me because it allows you, not only with yourself, but more importantly with the people in your circle of influence to say, where are they? If your spouse, if your children, if your family members are in pre-contemplation, please don't harass them. You're driving them further from the truth, because that's what this is, the truth. So instead, plant seeds of joy, but more importantly, show them the power of your own transformation. Let's face it, if everybody you know looks at you and says, wow, that guy or that girl is healthy looking, glowing, positive, joyful, fit, encouraging, hello, they're either going to hate you and never talk to you again, or they're going to say, I want to be more like you. They won't say it to you, but they're going to say that. But if you and I go, oh yeah, I'm a vegan, or I eat plant-based food, and we're 40, 50 pounds overweight, or we can't even walk up the hill without being out of breath, what's happened to our testimony, right? How many people are going to really care to hear what we have to say? So it's crucial, right, that you identify where that is. The same thing if you're talking about animal rights or the environment or et cetera, and then you're mean and rude and obnoxious to people, et cetera, same sort of thing. So I love to say that because it encourages me. I'm preaching to myself right now, as well as encouraging you. Because this little spark of truth, of nutrition, of exercise, emotional poise, sleep, all these good things, is best tied up, and it's said way too often these days, but in kind of a rind, thinking about like a grapefruit or an orange, of love, right? So that we are not only loving ourselves, loving our communities, loving the other individuals in our lives, but the greater society in the world. And that's so cheesy kind of a thing, but at the same time, it's so true. And we've got to come from that place, And I fail sometimes. I have actually had a couple patients write me very unpleasant reviews on health grades recently because I challenged them, I think, a little too much. That was actually a year or two ago, not recently. Most of them in the last year or so, I've used really Prochaska's stages of change more and just said, you tell me when you're ready if you're ever interested in reversing that diabetes, and I'm here for you. So think about that. And conclusion. We said that motion is lotion. True. We said use it or lose it. It appears true, right? We've got to continue to be physically active if activity matters to us. And no pain, no gain, depends, right? I'd like to end my time with you with a quote. As I started talking about my grandfather, I'll end with a quote of his as well. There's a book, Profound Simplicity, that has nothing to do with health, but this is exactly what this is, profound simplicity. It is profound in that it holds the truth in all its splendor within itself, and still it's so simple that unfortunately most people are unimpressed by the truth. Thank you for letting me share some thoughts with you.